Feel like lucid be my dreams. Said you said he love me, so I'm sure you know the means. It's like I'm living all inside a movie in a dream. Sequels to my life entirely up to me. Slowly suffocating, do you notice how it feels? Baby, can you hold me while I'm running through the field? Like
Joe Theismann's leg snapped so violently that he heard it break, a single tackle instantly ending his NFL career. Years later, Alex Smith survived a similar-looking injury, only for flesh-eating bacteria to turn a routine recovery into a fight to save his leg and his life. In boxing, Pritchard Colon absorbed illegal punches to the back.
Oh, I remember this one. This one is so fucking fucked up, bro. This one's actually bogus as fuck. Let me move this shit over here. That's so bogus.
Dizzy and collapsed as his brain slowly filled with blood, while in NASCAR, Dale Earnhardt hit the wall at nearly 160 miles per hour in a crash that looked ordinary on TV, but killed him instantly. In today's video, we'll be taking a look
Yo, man, niggas be dying in that NASCAR
shit
shit too.
Don't even worry about that, and we'll earn your subscription by the end of this video.
Yo, side note, what sport has the most deaths?
Miss Tubb, and let's get started with
I'm saying boxing or NASCAR for sure.
Joe Theismann, horrific and costly leg fracture. November 18th, 1985 is a date that changed everything for Washington Redskins quarterback Joe Theismann. It's Monday Night Football at RFK Stadium. The Redskins are tied 7-7 with the New York Giants in the second quarter. Theismann's having a solid game, connecting on 7 of his first 10 passes. Then Coach Gibbs calls for a flea flicker, which, if you don't know, is a trick play where the quarterback hands off to the running back, who immediately pitches it back. The Redskins had actually run the same play during their Super Bowl 17 win, so I believe they trusted it. Theismann hands the ball to John Riggins, gets it back, and starts scanning downfield. He's looking for Art Monk deep, then checks right for tight end Donnie Warren. But then the move doesn't work in their favor. The Giants were also putting their best feet forward, literally maybe. They were blitzing hard, and linebacker Lawrence Taylor, one of the most feared pass rushers in NFL history, came crashing in from Theismann's blindside. Now making this worse was that Pro Bowl left tackle Joe Jacoby, who normally would have been blocking Taylor, was out with a knee injury. His replacement just couldn't handle his knee and ankle. The injury was a comminuted compound fracture, which means the bones didn't just break, they shattered into multiple fragments.
Oh my god, I already know it. So you got hit like
actually broke through skin.
Oh my god, if your shit break through skin, that means, say your legs like this, that mean like your shit got hit and stayed. So like one of your shit got hit in place and stayed and went like, I don't know how to explain it. Like your shit got like, that's the only way your shit breaking out of bone. Oh my god.
The replay, Theismann's lower leg from his foot to mid shin is lying flat on the ground, while the upper part of his shin
I don't know if
is bent at a grotesque 45-degree angle. A very disturbing scene because, you know, this is a leg that was literally...
Oh, see what I'm saying? So see right here, his shit gonna get hit and this part gonna be straight, but it's gonna bend it, like it's gonna go like, oh my god.
We folded in directions legs aren't supposed to be bent at.
Oh
the
my
Redskins orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Charles Jackson, rushed onto the field. When he looked down at Theismann's leg, the bone was sticking through his sock. Jackson's immediate concern was dirt, grass, and sock fibers from the wound to prevent infection, before even considering how or whether they could properly fix the bone in surgery. As they wheeled Theismann off the field on a stretcher at 10:05 p.m., he actually remembered the exact time from the big RFK Stadium clock. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. Even being optimistic, Joe told his teammates, "Don't worry guys, I'll be back." At Arlington Hospital, Jackson performed a meticulous surgery, washing the wound with gallons of saline solution. The problem was that the membrane around the bone had already been stripped away, making the repair incredibly complex. The surgery involved intramedullary nailing, basically inserting a metal rod into the tibia to stabilize it. But the brutal reality of this injury is that even after the bone healed, there was insufficient bone growth, which left Theismann's right leg permanently shorter than his left. For an NFL quarterback who needs perfect balance and footwork, that's a career ender. Theismann was 36 years old, and just like that, his playing days were behind him.
You know, at least he was 36. Like, at least that didn't happen at like 23. He got to play on most of his career, you know?
Bleeding from the brain. So I actually have a fully dedicated video to
God, bro, this one's fucked.
2021. So if you want to go even more into detail, I'll leave a link to that in the description. But this is a story that comes up for some reason, like every year, whenever I'm on TikTok or Instagram Reels. Not to make this about me, I'm not making this about me, but I just noticed that this story comes up yearly. So I always feel like it's worth talking about to spread awareness. Anyway, let's start Pritchard's story. Some sports are absurdly dangerous, especially the likes of boxing, kickboxing, etc. You know, the ones that involve two humans.
Gang, I feel like once you hit a nigga in the back of the head like a 1-2 time, the shit should just be called off, fam. You can't keep hitting a nigga in the back of the head multiple times.
Ring to obliterate each other. One bad strike, and things can go very, very wrong. So with that in mind, let's go back to October 17th of 2015. Pritchard Colon was living the dream he'd had since elementary school. The Puerto Rican boxer was undefeated at 16-0, with 13 of those wins coming by knockout. He trained since he was 8 years old with his father. Pritchard even told his mom, "Mamita, I want to be a professional boxer. I want to represent Puerto Rico, and I want to be a world champion." That Saturday afternoon, he was fighting Terrell Williams at the Eagle Bank Arena in Fairfax, Virginia. This was supposed to be Pritchard's moment. The fight started well enough. Colon looked sharp in the early rounds, slightly ahead on points, but then things started getting messy. Williams kept hitting him in the back of the head, what's called rabbit punches in boxing, and they're illegal for a reason. These punches target the brainstem and can cause serious neurological damage. Pritchard kept pointing to the back of his head, complaining to the referee Joe Cooper about the illegal hits, but the referee did nothing about it.
That's crazy, bro.
Then came the 7th.
Like, the UFC don't even... If the UFC, niggas is jumping and kneeing niggas. Niggas is elbowing niggas. all type of shit. If the UFC see that shit and they're like, yo, nah, nigga, that can't happen. There's no fucking way in boxing, you're just allowing that to happen, gang. The ref high should get sued. Yeah, like, the ref was high, should get sued for sure.
Round. Williams connected with a straight right hand directly to the back of Pritchard's head, sending him to the canvas. Pritchard got up, but...
Bro, once you hit a nigga multiple times, even if you hit a nigga and that nigga drop to the ground like that off of a hit from the back of the head, that shit needs to stop.
Clearly wrong.
He needs to get checked
to the
out.
ringside physician, Dr. Richard Ashby, with his right hand on the back of his head.
Look at that!
Changed everything. Golon said he was dizzy and hurting in the back of his head, but he felt he could go on. And yes, the doctor let him continue fighting. This is an important detail of the fight because in this article, a referee named Joe Cortez basically points out a medical failure, saying that when a fighter says he's dizzy, quote, the doctor is obligated to stop the fight immediately. But they didn't.
Medical staff failed, the ref failed, this nigga failed. Why are you punching the thing in the back of the... Everything went like this is a situation where everything went wrong, bro.
Round and was only 1 point behind Williams on the scorecard. That brings us to the 9th round. Williams knocked Golon down for the first time in his professional career. Then he did it again. Pritchard was seriously struggling. When the round ended, his corner mistakenly thought it was a 10th and final round, so they started taking his gloves off, which led the referee to disqualify him. The thing is, that disqualification probably saved Golon's life. By the time they reached the dressing room, Pritchard was collapsing. He tried to sit in a chair and slipped on the floor. Then he started vomiting. Inside Pritchard's skull, a subdural hematoma was forming, blood pooling between his brain and skull. The repeated trauma to the back of his head had caused blood vessels to rupture. As his blood accumulated, it created pressure on his brain tissue, essentially crushing it against the inside of his skull. Paramedics rushed him to
You know what they have to do when your brain gets hit so much that it swell? Bro, when it gets hit like that, bro. I have yet to hear of this shit working, but what they do is because your head gets hit, your brain gets hit so much, it starts to swell up. They cut out a part of your skull to give it space. I haven't heard of that shit working for a nigga yet. I'm gonna be honest. But that's what they do. But every time, that's the only chance you have. But I still haven't heard of that shit working. Most niggas I hear, they either have brain damage or they die.
Fairfax Hospital. A CT scan confirmed the worst. He had a brain bleed. Surgeons immediately performed emergency surgery to relieve the pressure, removing part of the skull to give his swelling brain room to expand. But the damage was already catastrophic. And like I said, the problem started with the rabbit punches. They're banned because as they happen, the brain doesn't have pain receptors, so a boxer like Pritchard wouldn't feel their brain bleeding. In his case,
exactly. And then the thing about it is that, like, bro, once you hit that point where your brains, you have a brain, once you hit that point where your brain's already swelling, the reason I'm, like how I said, I don't think I've seen a nigga survive that is because, look, once you hit that point where your brain is swelling, it's already bleeding, these parts of your brain are already getting fucked up. Like, where this shit is bleeding at, this part of your brain's already fucked up. So you don't have lung at all. And by the time they would have cut out your skull to give this shit space, my fault, let me move this shit. By the time they would have cut out your skull to give this shit space, my nigga, that blood done spread, bro, you're fucked. Like, you might be fucked, I ain't gonna lie.
Accumulated in that 1.5 centimeter space, it compressed vital brain.
I'm surprised he survived. Most of the ones I hear,
like breathing, swallowing.
My bad, but most of the ones I hear is like they die, bro. I ain't gonna lie. Yeah, you see that happen with Muhammad Ali. Some gotta happen with Muhammad Ali.
Was likely damaged by both the direct trauma from the punches and the pressure from the bleeding. Next thing was Pritchard falling into a coma. He stayed unconscious for 221 days, and when he finally woke up, he was in a persistent vegetative state. And mind you, he was just 23 years old. There's been some progress years later. Pritchard can now blink on command, close his eyes when asked, but any full recovery is said to be very unlikely. And I also want to give a big shout out to his mom.
Yeah, I hope his mom sued the fuck out of them niggas, bro.
You can just tell how much his mom loves him, how much she takes care of him, along with his other family members. But she actually commented on the original video that I made, thanking me for spreading the word. And I don't know, it just hits home. I also love my mom and would hope she would do the same if, well, I know she would do the same if it happened to me. But to end this segment off, big shout out to Pritchard's mom. If you're watching this, you're a super strong woman. And shout out to Pritchard himself. And with that being said, please, if you're going to play a sport that is this demanding, just be safe about it. And all the referees out there, come on, make good calls. Let's head on to the next one. Dale Earnhardt, deadly crash mid-race. The world of high-speed racing. This is, of course, where everything depends on split-second decisions of the person behind the wheel. One of the biggest races in NASCAR, the Daytona 500, went down on February 18, 2001, and this particular year was massive. Fox Sports had just signed a $1 billion broadcast deal, and the entire nation was tuned in. 17 million people watching at home. 150,000 fans packed into Daytona International Speedway. And right there, in the thick of it, was Dale Earnhardt Sr., a legend they called the Intimidator. He was a 7-time Winston Cup champion with 76 career wins. This 49-year-old from North Carolina was NASCAR royalty, known for his aggressive driving style that earned him that intimidating nickname.
Yeah, NASCAR should get wicked, bro.
But protecting his own team's cars. Earnhardt had led for 17 laps and was doing what he did best, playing defense. With just 2 laps to go, he was running third, but he wasn't trying to win. He was blocking, zigzagging his black number 3 Chevrolet back and forth across the track to keep anyone from catching up with his teammates up front. Then came the final lap. Turn 4, the last corner before the finish line. Sterling Marlin was pushing hard, trying one last time to get around Earnhardt. As they screamed into the final turn at around 160 miles per hour, Earnhardt dropped low to block Marlin's advance, but he didn't quite clear Marlin's nose. All it took was some light contact. Earnhardt's car got loose and slid down onto the flat section at the bottom of the track. For a split second, it looked like he could save it, but then Ken Schrader's car, unable to avoid him, slammed into Earnhardt's passenger side door. That impact changed everything. It created a sudden surge of speed and turned both cars hard right, sending them straight into the concrete retaining wall. Earnhardt hit at what investigators later determined was a 55 to 59 degree angle at somewhere between 157 and 161 miles per hour. But let me try to explain that better. See, Earnhardt's car went from 160 miles to about 115 in approximately 80 milliseconds.
Hold on, let's break this down. 80 mil. Okay, no, I need to break this down because for the niggas not in America. Hold on. 160 mph to kmh. What the fuck? 257 kilometers per hour. Holy shit. And then he went from that to 150. What was that? 115 to 185. So he stopped like, oh my god. Oh my god. Any part of his body jerked. If his head jerked, yo, you get hit like that and you stop that suddenly, your head jerks, your neck probably snap, all type of some shit. Holy fuck.
The G-forces from that impact range from 60 to 68 Gs. To put that into perspective, the force was equivalent to dropping from a height vertically of about 62 feet and hitting the concrete. The right corner of his Monte
What the fuck?
Carlo was crushed flat against the wall. To the 17 million people watching at home, the crash looked like nothing.
Yeah, it didn't look that bad.
His car uninjured and immediately went to check on Earnhardt. He pulled down Earnhardt's window net and he knew it. The pilot was no longer alive. Inside Earnhardt's skull, the worst type of injury had occurred: a basilar skull fracture. This is a break in the bone at the base of the skull where it meets the spine. It's the most serious type of skull fracture and typically causes major bleeding in that area. The violent deceleration combined with the angle of impact had caused Earnhardt's head to whip forward and then snap back. What happened is his chin hit the steering wheel on the initial impact hard enough that the underside of his chin showed the mark. Then, as his body rebounded backward, the back of his head struck the rear of the seat. Because his open-face helmet had shifted forward during the impact, the back of his head wasn't protected anymore. The bone broke right where the skull connects to the spine, and that kind of injury is immediately fatal. He also suffered 8 broken ribs, a broken left ankle, and a fractured sternum. Even though those injuries did happen, they kind of didn't matter. The basilar skull fracture is what killed him instantly. Alex Smith, a flesh-eating bacteria complication. November 18th, 2018, 33 years after Joe Theismann's fracture in 1985. But this one's almost harder to believe because the injury itself wasn't even the worst part. So, here's what happened. Alex Smith was a 34-year-old quarterback for the Washington Redskins in his 14th season in the NFL. November 18th started like any other home game day. He spent the night at the team hotel, his wife Elizabeth and their 3 kids went through their usual routine, and Alex called her right before kickoff for their little pep talk. Just another Sunday, until it wasn't. Third quarter, Redskins are playing the Houston Texans, and Smith gets sacked by defensive players Kareem Jackson and J.J. Watt. He goes down hard. Smith had suffered a spiral fracture that started down in his ankle joint and spiraled all the way up through his tibia to his knee. His fibula was also broken. For context, tibia and fibula are the 2 bones running from the knee down to the ankle. Anyway, the injury was severe, but the doctors seemed optimistic. They put in 3 plates and over 20 screws and pins, and it went really well. They told him, quote, "You'll be in the hospital for 2 days, do a little rehab, and then you'll be on your way." But Tuesday came, and Smith still had a fever and significant pain. The doctor convinced him to stay 1 more night instead of going home, and thank God she did, because Wednesday night, everything went sideways. By midnight, Smith wasn't himself anymore. He was drifting in and out of consciousness. His fever was through the roof, blood pressure dropping. Doctors thought maybe it was a blood clot or pulmonary embolism. Test after test was done, and then they figured it out. He had an infection, and it was in his blood. He was septic. By Thursday morning, another doctor came in early. He unwrapped Smith's surgical bandages, and even though they just checked it hours earlier and everything had looked normal, by then his leg was black. So they rushed him back into surgery. When the doctors came out, they looked defeated. The infection had already spread through all his soft tissue. They removed a large amount of muscle and skin, but it still wasn't enough. That's when they realized what it really was: necrotizing fasciitis. In other words, flesh-eating bacteria. The cultures confirmed, specifically a rare bacteria called Aeromonas hydrophila, usually found in freshwater or brackish water. Nobody knows how exactly it got into his bloodstream, but it was there, and he was eating away at his leg while he was dying from sepsis. For a week straight, doctors took Smith into surgery every single day for debridements, which is cutting away infected skin, tissue, and muscle. It was 8 debridements total. When they were finally done, Smith had a completely exposed tibia from knee to ankle. Yep, exposed bone, no muscle or skin covering. From there, they had 2 options: amputation.
Yeah, I never even heard of like a real life flesh eating disease like that. That sounds crazy. Like, I know people have got them, but holy shit.
Or a massive muscle transfer, where they take part of Smith's left quadrant.
Like, I heard about people who got them, but yo, Oh, I
muscle
couldn't. That's
and use it to cover
fucked.
his exposed right tibia. It sounds like an easy decision, but it's not at all. The catch is that it might not work, and if it failed, he needs to amputate anyway. But now with a weakened left leg too, Smith accepted it anyway and went over 17 surgeries total over 9 months. And against all odds, he survived. He even returned to football in 2020, started games, helped take his team to the playoffs, and in 2021 was voted NFL Comeback Player of the Year.
Wow, that's actually
Eric
fucking
LeGrand,
impressive.
paralysis
Yeah.
from a tackle.
That's
But
impressive.
what if I told you that American football has the highest injury rate of any sport? You probably wouldn't be surprised.
Wait,
It's responsible for
sorry, side note. I just want to search up what sport has the highest death rate. Motorsports racing, combat sports, boxing. Like, is there a number, like a specific order?
for about 35.9 injuries per 1,000 athletic exposures, concussions, ACL tears, fractures, you name it. The violent collisions are just part of the game, but are also devastating in some cases. And yes, this is one of those cases. October 16, 2010. MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Rutgers University is playing Army, and 20-year-old Eric LeGrand is a junior defensive tackle wearing number 52. He's 6'2", 250 pounds of pure athleticism. Fourth quarter kickoff play. LeGrand is sprinting down the field to make a tackle on Army's kick returner, Malcolm Brown. He put his head down while running, assuming only his shoulder would make contact. Instead, the crown of his head, the very top of his helmet, drove straight into Brown's shoulder blade. In football, leading with your head, especially the crown, turns your neck into a compression point
Oh my
that absorbs
God,
all
yeah.
the force of impact. So the
Oh
collision
my
was
God.
instantaneous. LeGrand was credited with the tackle, but he didn't get up. He couldn't.
Wait, I
Rolling
wasn't
around
paying
for
attention. Is
several
he
minutes, unable to
paralyzed?
move anything except his head, unable to breathe on his own. As the medical team loaded him onto a gurney to car him off the field, LeGrand tried to give the crowd a thumbs up, you know, the gesture that athletes do to show that they're okay, but he couldn't even lift his arm up. And let's talk
Oh
about
my
the
God, he's
diagnosis. He
paralyzed.
had fractured his C3 and C4 cervical vertebrae.
Ooh.
That's high up in the neck, right below the base of the skull. He was paralyzed from the neck down. So yes,
Wow.
paralyzed, but why? How exactly does a broken spine paralyze you? The cervical spine has 7 vertebrae, right? Labeled C1 through C7. The higher up the injury, the more severe the paralysis. A C3 to C4 injury sits right in the danger zone where your spinal cord controls breathing, arm movement, and everything below. When those vertebrae fracture, the bone fragments or swelling can compress or sever the spinal cord, the bundle of nerves that carry signals between your brain and body. Once that connection is damaged or cut, the brain can't send movement signals down, and the body can't send sensation signals up. Everything below the injury point goes offline. For LeGrand, that meant he couldn't move his arms, couldn't move his legs, couldn't even breathe without help. So doctors put him on a ventilator immediately and told his mother Karen that he would likely need that breathing machine for the rest of his life.
Wow.
He had a 0 to 5% chance of ever walking again. Basically, they told him he'd never live a normal life again. But the next day, when LeGrand woke up, he managed to mouth 3 words to his mother: "I'll be back." 2 weeks after the injury, LeGrand was transferred to a rehabilitation facility and started proving everyone wrong almost immediately. By January of 2011, he was breathing completely on his
Hey.
own. By summer that same year, he had regained movement in his shoulders and sensation throughout his body. But more than 14 years later, he's still in a motorized wheelchair. Vince
Wow,
Coleman,
that's
strange
fucking
tarp injury.
insane,
So
bro.
we've talked about gruesome leg fractures, brain bleeds, fatal crashes, and paralysis. But believe it or not, one of the most consequential injuries in baseball history actually came from something that had absolutely nothing to do with the actual game. This is what happened. In 1985, St. Louis Cardinals rookie Vince Coleman was having the kind of season dreams are made of. The 24-year-old speedster had stolen 110 bases in his first major league season, shattering Juan Samuel's rookie record of 72 on his way to the Rookie of the Year honors. There wasn't a catcher in baseball who could stop him. The Cardinals, running Redbirds, had won 101 games, and Coleman was the centerpiece of their speed-based offense. Now they were in the National League Championship Series against the Los Angeles Dodgers, but to be honest, the series wasn't going well. The Dodgers had won the first 2 games, and Mike Scioscia behind the plate had gunned down 3 of 4 attempted base stealers, including Coleman. The Cardinals finally found their legs in Game 3, winning the 3 stolen bases, but they were still down 2-1 in the series heading into Game 4 at Busch Stadium. Okay, so that's the context. October 13th was overcast in St. Louis. As the Cardinals warmed up before the game, a light rain started falling. Nothing serious enough to threaten the game, just enough to make things slippery. One by one, players started heading back to the clubhouse. Coleman was among them, gathering his equipment near home plate. But as Coleman turned to toss his glove to coach Dave Ricketts, someone pushed a button to activate Busch Stadium's automated tarpaulin system. This wasn't your usual
fuck
tarp that
is
gets
that?
pulled by hand. This was a massive mechanical cylinder that rose up from beneath the ground on the first base side of home plate and rolled across the field, unrolling the cover as it went. The cylinder and tarp together weighed approximately 1,200 pounds, spread across 180 feet, and it was heading straight for Coleman, the fastest man in baseball. The guy who'd stolen 110 bases that season couldn't outrun it, or probably never expected it. The machine hit his ankle and then went up his knee. Meanwhile, everyone else kind of froze for a few seconds before springing into action. They got to the guy controlling the tarp down beyond first base and told him to shut it off. But here's the problem. To reverse the tarp and free Coleman's leg, they had to roll it back over his leg again. When it was all over, it was just cuts and tenderness, no fractures visible, at first. But then came more bad news. The day after the Cardinals won Game 2 of the World Series against the Kansas City Royals, his
Bro.
doctor made new tests using more sensitive film. There they found a small bone chip, just
I never even heard of that shit, that tarp shit. What the
1 by
fuck?
3 millimeters that had been pulled off. It wasn't a big deal, but big enough to end Coleman's season. The quote-unquote killer tarp, as it became known, had caught the one guy in baseball nobody could catch. But seriously, it was devastating to him and potentially cost the Cardinals a championship in the process.
Wow.
Jeb Corliss, wingsuit crash. Now, some sports aren't really about competition or fitness, they're about chasing the pure adrenaline, pushing limits just to see how far you can take it, and wingsuit flying is one of those sports. If you've never heard about it, it's a sport where you're essentially turning yourself into a human flying squirrel, gliding through the air at over 100 miles per hour, wearing what's basically a fabric suit with wings. And Jeb Corliss has built an entire career doing this. By January of 2012, the 35-year-old American had jumped off the Eiffel Tower, flown through caves in China, hit
Would y'all ever do like some shit like this? Or like, what's that thing that people do gliding where like they have like that Dorito type shit and they just glide through the air? I would never do that shit, bro. That shit's crazy. I feel like this shit crazy. Skydiving, maybe if you had like a nigga strapped with you, you know, like a professional, but like just doing some shit like this, hell no.
During his 18-year career, each time he'd walked away. Maybe that's why on that particular morning in Cape Town, South Africa, he was feeling a bit too confident. Corliss was filming an interview for HBO's Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. The highlight would be a wingsuit fly off Table Mountain. Specifically, he'd fly between two helium balloons hung on a ledge. His friend who witnessed the jump remembers Corliss saying something along the lines of, "Table Mountain is my bitch," while surrounded by models. And just so you know, there's a saying in extreme sports, when people stop respecting the world's most dangerous activities, something interesting is bound to happen. Anyway, the day started with problems from the get-go. They planned to jump early to avoid turbulent air, but Corliss got stuck in traffic. As the temperature rose, so did the urgency at the exit point. Their friend Moose had tied two balloons to small rocks on the ledge. Another jumper named Joby did a test jump first, flying about 10 meters over the balloons, but nobody realized that the turbulence from Joby's flight moved the balloons lower than where they'd been positioned. When Corliss jumped, thinking he was aiming for the balloons, his actual flight path was taking him directly into the mountain face. The jump looked normal at first, but disaster soon struck. He'd been flying at approximately 120 miles per hour when his left foot clipped a boulder. Then his entire body slammed into the granite face of Table Mountain at full speed. Silence and no body movement.
Fat, his legs shattered immediately after it hit that boulder, gang.
Also, everybody assumed the parachute had come out on impact, which was clearly a grim sign. But somehow, incredibly, Corliss was alive. When the first rescuer reached him, Corliss was lying under a makeshift sun cover, bloody and battered but conscious. He had suffered a broken ankle, 3 broken toes, 6 broken ribs, a bruised lung, and a torn ACL that required reconstructive surgery. His left leg was essentially destroyed from the initial boulder impact. But did he leave the sport? Of course not. Just over a year later, in October of 2013, Corliss attempted what might be an even more dangerous stunt. Red Bull China asked him to fly his wingsuit through a narrow slot on Langshan Mountain outside Shanghai, a V-shaped crack that was 60 feet wide at the top but only 15 feet wide at the bottom. Extending for the length of 3 football fields. He made it out alive. I guess the thrill just made it worth going back, even after almost dying. I don't know. You guys are gonna have to ask the man himself. If I had an accident, do it for any sport, I'm out. I'm out for life. Hey, maybe I'm just boring. I don't know. Let's head on to the next one. Sarah Burke, fatal skiing crash. Athletes push limits every day, chasing speed, height, perfection. But sometimes even the best can't escape fate. January 10th, 2012 was supposed to be just another training day for Sarah Burke. She was 29 years old and at the absolute peak of her freestyle skiing career. Some say she was a legend of that sport and with good resume. 4-time Winter X Games champion, 2005 world gold medalist, the first woman to ever land 3 full rotations in competition. ESPN had named her best female sports athlete in 2000.
I know I've never been skiing before, but yo, that shit's low-key hard. Like, I feel like it's a very slept-on sport. That shit, you have to be talented to do that shit.
But more than that, Burke had spent years fighting to get women's half-pipe skiing into the Olympics, and she'd finally succeeded. It was set to debut at the 2014 Sochi Games, where she was the early favorite for gold. So she was training at Park City Mountain Resort in Utah that day, preparing for the upcoming X Games in Aspen, where she was a defending champion. Burke was attempting a trick called a flat spin 540 during a private training run. It's a trick where the skier spins 1.5 times in the air while staying mostly horizontal. It's tricky because you have to rotate fast, stay balanced, and land it. She actually completed the trick fairly well, but fell onto her head. The crash didn't look that severe at first, and you know how sometimes the worst injuries are dramatic? Well, this was one of those. But moments later, everything had changed. Burke went into cardiac arrest right there on the ski slope. The fall had caused her to tear her vertical artery, one of the 4 major arteries that supply blood to the brain. These arteries run up through the bones in your neck and feed oxygen-rich blood to your brainstem, the part that controls breathing and heart function. When that artery tore, it caused a massive intracranial hemorrhage. Translation, blood pouring into her brain. It was that bleeding that triggered her heart to stop. Emergency personnel immediately started CPR, but she remained without a pulse or spontaneous breathing as they worked on her. She was resuscitated and airlifted to the University of Utah Hospital in Salt Lake City, where doctors put her on life support and initiated therapeutic hypothermia to try to protect her brain. The next day, a neurosurgeon performed a successful surgery to repair the torn artery, but while doctors could fix the artery, they couldn't undo what had already happened. During those critical minutes when her heart had stopped on the mountain, when blood and oxygen weren't reaching her brain, irreversible damage was done. On January 19th of 2012, 9 days after the accident, Sarah Burke died.
Wow.
Clint Malarchuk, slashed throat. Can you survive
my God, is this hockey?
I mean, the carotid artery in your throat carries nearly 50% of your blood to your brain, and if cut, most people would have.
I'm assuming this is hockey.
That's why what happened next on March 22nd, 1989 is almost hard to believe. It was a Wednesday night game between the Buffalo Sabres and the St. Louis Blues, and Clint Malarchuk was in net for Buffalo. It's the first period, about 4 minutes and 44 seconds in. The puck's on the boards in the corner, and Malarchuk's on his post, doing what goalies do. Then Steve Tuttle, a 23-year-old rookie for the Blues, charges toward the net looking for a pass. Buffalo's defense.
You know what I always wondered about hockey? I always thought I thought way more niggas would be getting cut by skates and shit. I thought that shit would happen way more frequently. Like,
Uwe Krupp is right behind him, and as the pass comes, Krupp pulls Tuttle down from behind. They both slide into the crease, skates first. Tuttle's skate blade catches Malarchuk right on the front right side of his neck. At first, it just feels like a kick to the mask, no pain. But then Malarchuk pulls his helmet off and sees the blood. And I'm not talking about a little blood here. It was a gushing stream. And this is one of those that I can't really play a lot of the clip. You can go look for it yourself on YouTube. But
was
I'm
it
not
jugular cut?
So this is one of those where I really can't show that much. The stream was shooting out with every heartbeat, spattering red across the face.
Bro, if this is jugular, there's no way he survives.
Soft circle, more like a water fountain would. Turns out, Tuttle's skate had severed Malarchuk's carotid artery and partially cut his jugular vein. Remember, the carotid is the main highway that delivers blood to your brain. And
he might be able to survive. I know the carotid artery is important, but if he cut the jugular, like it's partially cut. If you cut the jugular, it's over.
When that gets cut, you've got minutes before you bleed out. Malarchuk knew it too. He grabbed his neck, trying to keep the blood in, but it just kept rushing between his fingers. Now, the only reason Malarchuk survived is because of one man, Jim Pizzutelli, the Sabres' athletic trainer. Pizzutelli was a combat medic veteran in Vietnam, a country where during his second week, he'd seen a decapitation. He'd handled the worst combat had to offer. So when he got to Malarchuk on the ice, he didn't panic. He grabbed Malarchuk's neck with both hands and literally pinched off the blood vessels, applying so much pressure that Malarchuk could barely breathe. They got him off the ice and into the trainer's room. The team doctor pressed a towel down on his throat with all his weight, letting up just enough for Malarchuk to breathe before the blood would spout out again. Malarchuk was convinced he was dying. By the time he was put in the ambulance, he had already lost 1.5 liters of blood. That's about a third of the blood in an adult's body. But he survived. It took doctors 300 stitches to close a 6-inch wound in his neck. And the craziest part is, 11 days later, Malarchuk was back on the ice.
What?
Fatal wrestling fall.
Oh my god, I know about this. CM Punk. CM Punk to go. I don't give a fuck what a nigga say. CM Punk to go. Jeff Hardy up there too.
But on May 23rd of 1999, something happened in Kansas City that no one expected. A stunt went horribly wrong,
oh my god,
and a beloved wrestler's life ended before the audience even realized it.
You know what's crazy? It's like somebody. This isn't on video. Like no, the public doesn't have this video, but somebody on this earth has that shit on VHS. Like there's niggas on this earth who have that shit for sure.
WWE crazy event called Over the Edge, and he was supposed to make this big theatrical
I know about this one.
alter ego, the Blue Blazer. The whole gimmick was initially goofy, a parody of a superhero who took himself way too seriously. Part of the act involved Hart being lowered from the rafters on a cable 78 feet above the ring, then pretending to get tangled up before releasing himself and falling flat on his face for laughs. He'd done the stunt before, but this time WWE had added something new to the setup, a quick release harness, and that was a mistake. So here's what happened.
CM Punk, yo, sorry to get off topic, but CM Punk's a fucking goat, bro. I don't give a fuck. Pipe bomb era, best in the world era. Held the title for 400 days, nigga. Like, what we talking
Hart was
about?
up in the rafters of Kemper Arena, hooked into this harness.
Sorry. Another side note. Held the belt for 400 plus days while being hated by the management. Roman Reigns held the title for bare time, but the management loved him and was pushing him as much as they could. CM Punk was holding that shit just off the mirror of who he was, nigga. Like the higher ups in WWE fucking hated him, nigga, and he still held that shit for 400 days. Put on classics after classics.
It was cute.
Holy shit.
They were showing
that era?
the video package on the screens while Hart was being positioned.
My bad. Sorry to pause again. First nigga to survive getting cashed in by the Money in Bank and still not lose the fucking title, nigga. He's one of them ones, nigga.
Hart was moving around to get comfortable with both the harness and his cape. He accidentally triggered the quick release mechanism. The thing required barely any pressure to unlatch. And just like that, Hart plummeted 78 feet. He fell chest first onto the top rope, missing the nearest turnbuckle by about a foot before landing on his back onto the mat. The impact was devastating. The force of hitting that rope from that height severed his aorta, which is the main artery that carries blood from your heart to the rest of your body.
God.
When your aorta ruptures like that, blood floods into your chest cavity and lungs almost immediately. You're looking at minutes before death, maybe less. It wasn't until the lights came back on that people realized that Hart was laying motionless in the ring. They tried multiple times to revive him, but the internal bleeding.
Like, I'd like to see if anyone who has suffered injuries like that, like there's certain injuries, if they ever survived it. Rest in peace, Owen Hart, bro.
From the blunt force trauma was way too bad. But while doctors were noting the time of Hart's death, the show in the arena had went on as if nothing had happened. It wasn't until the event was over that they announced Owen Hart had died in front of everyone after the fall. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, if you liked the way I...
Holy fuck, shout out to Tub, man. That shit is fucking insane, gang. Yeah, bro, like, that shit's crazy. My bad, the energy's a little bit down. I'm tired of shit. We gonna be going live earlier, bro. But I love and appreciate y'all, boys.
Something, baby, I like just how you blushing. And maybe we could bust it at the function. Turn nothing to something. Wish you could just see the horrors of my life may upbring.